Hey Tanis, I've looked over your lesson plan and here's my feedback. This is a really cool lesson plan. I love the choices that you made about the standards to teach because they align so well with the novel. I mean, like, I can really feel your intentional choice. Your alignment is great. The choice of standards is perfect with the text. I love the fact that you're asking the kids a lot of questions, instead of like standing at the front telling them everything. I'm going to push you just a little bit beyond to ask different types of questions, right? So we can kind of think about like those scaffolded type questions. We've been talking about that in class with my little flip book. But other than like pushing you into scaffolded questions, this is a really great lesson plan. So let's walk through it piece by piece, all right? So like I said, a perfect goal to choose for looking at the beginning of this text, all right? Love your essential questions, and I like your students will be able to here. You might want to do a little bit of an extension. So you have students will be able to look at how the interpretation of text can be affected by the author's choices. So there's a by clause. And here's another by clause, by analyzing how the author chooses to introduce a character, okay? You might want to think, these are 11th grade. Okay. I was gonna say, you might want to think about having a by clause that's super concrete, right? By citing textual, 3 pieces of textual evidence that prove author's choice of character introduction or something like that, right? If you have something really concrete like that, that way when the students walk in, they know what they'll be doing. I'll be reading a text, I'll be analyzing author's choice to introduce a character, and I'll demonstrate that understanding by doing what, right? By picking 3 pieces of textual evidence or something like that. Now, these are 11th graders, and I hadn't super paid attention to that at first, so you might not necessarily need to do that. It's one of those things you want to think about. Practice doing it in your lesson plans, knowing that as you move through the year with the kids, and some kids who are a little bit more mature may not need it, but you might have some kids who need that real concrete piece, and it's a very beautiful way for you to make your objective quantifiable for the day. Right? So that students leave and you're like, hey, have you done your 3 pieces of textual evidence? Have you proved to me, have you written a warrant that proves to me how that, analyzes author's choice? And it's this beautiful accountability piece from students to you and from you to administration. Here's what we did today. How do you know that your students have learned? I know that they learned because they gave me 3 pieces of evidence and analyzed them. Here's my proof, right? Unfortunately, that's the kind of world we're moving into, but fortunately, it's super easy to hurdle. So think about that when you're writing these by clauses, having something really concrete in there so that bare minimum, if you're exhausted at the end of the day, you're like, did students learn? Check, 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 check. Got it. I can go home. You know what I'm saying? So, okay, sorry to get so nitty gritty on that. Just think about that, okay? All right. Good assessments. Okay, good. So we saw your hook in class the other day, and I think that was really good, right? How is it that settings impact people, right? You may just want to think about extending this into a question, right? You have students discussing what they came up with, and then syncing that kind of thinking in with a question. So, is it true? Does where we grow up, who the people, the city, the state, the region, all that kind of stuff, does it impact who we are? Really set that hook with the kids deep where they're like, yeah, it kind of does. Excellent. I'm glad you agree with me, because I think that when you look at how this author chooses to let the setting impact the character, you're really going to believe it even more so, right? Like, turn it into, like you've thrown the bait out, they've swallowed the hook, now sink it really deep, all right? Careful with your teacher speak here, okay? Here's a worksheet of the 5 literary elements to reference as we talk about the author's choices of these elements in the unit. Double plan that, right? Make yourself a 16-year-old kid sitting in your English class at 7:30 in the morning on a Monday, and your teacher says that. Like, ding, 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 we're moving into learning mode, brain shutting down, right? Keep that really cool tone you had in the beginning, how like, yeah, it's totally different. I used to live here and people were like that. I used to live here and people were like that. Yeah, what do people think about this and that? Good. Keep that really cool influence going by saying, so the really interesting thing about reading about other people is that the author gets to make all of these choices, right? You live here in Greeley, Colorado, but when you write, you can set your author anywhere. Your author can be an Arctic explorer, like closing in on the North Pole. Your author can be a total tribal native living in the Amazon rainforest, and that really impacts. And it's so cool to think about how those choices are going to mesh or not mesh with your character. So there's 5 really important author choices that we want to look at, and I don't want to overburden you guys with notes, so I just put them in a handout here. So let's look at these author choices. See how that kind of a transition kept this like cool idea and this notion of choice really forefront and kind of tucked that teacher speak in underneath there, okay? It's subtle changes, and it's things like that I want to help you guys on throughout the semester so that as you're talking to your students, you can keep that kind of interesting energy up there and tuck the teaching behind instead of like signaling them, we're moving into student mode. See what I'm saying? And Tanis, I gotta tell you, these are not conversations I expected to be having with a 308 student in September. These are the kinds of conversations that I expect to be having like with my student teachers after like multiple semesters of prep. So the fact that like I'm stopping to nitpick on this right here actually speaks really highly of your abilities, because if there had been major problems or gaps in your lesson plan like on down the page, I would have glossed right over this and gone for the major pieces. But there aren't. This is great. So, okay, take it as a compliment, all right? So good. I love that you're doing questions, right? Here are the elements, read them over. What do you think? Why are these author choices important to a story? Right? You asked them to think instead of telling them. I love it, okay? Anticipated the answers. Perfect. Again, we're focusing on choice, right? We're going to focus on how the author chose to introduce the characters, right? Again here, think about a tiny little wraparound to bring them back into you, right? It's that ebb and flow of teaching. Instead of saying, one choice an author can make is how he introduces characters. Why would that be important? Flip this on its head. Look at your answer that you anticipated and make that a question. Go, okay guys, have you ever met someone for the first time and like, you totally, right, we don't want to do this and you don't mean to do it, but you can't help it. It's human nature, like, bang, first impressions. Can you think of any time when you were like, oh my God, my first impressions were right or they were wrong? Put them into that memory loop, let them grab a couple memories and go, good. So, right, search for that answer where you go, okay, because the first time you met that guy and he was like just running off the basketball court and he was all sweaty and pumped and everything, you're like, okay, this guy's a total jock. Setting influenced impression. How would your impression have been different if the first time you met that guy, he had had a button-down polo shirt and glasses and a stack of books, and he was walking out of the library holding 3 books in one hand and reading the other book and bumped into you because he was so into his book he couldn't even realize like where he was. Ah, right. So, authors are going to make those choices for their character. Let's watch as he introduces, this author introduces her first character, and let's see if this first impression is going to be reliable or not. See how I sunk them back into this tiny little memory loop. And Tanis, I know that you already think about this stuff because look at this answer. Flip your answer, turn it into a question, sink them into the memory loop, roll them into the text, okay? And it's a very rhythmic thing that I want you to work on that I totally know you can do, right? You ask the question, right? This is your teacher brain, okay? Teacher brain asks the question, anticipate student answer. Now put on your teacher persona. How do I take that answer, turn it into a memory loop, and pull a question from that? Okay, it's like plan, double plan, move into text. Okay, start thinking like that so that you're going to rough draft your lesson plan. You're going to revise your lesson plan. You're going to transition into the piece every time, just real fluid like that, okay? I love your interrupted reading here. Read the first 2 paragraphs, stop. What do we know about the character? Why did the author make that choice? It's that beautiful thing. What did the author do? Why did the author do it? Perfect. So do you see how that's affecting us? Yeah, it totally means this and that. Awesome. Now, I want you to do guided practice. Read to the bottom of the next page. What did the author do? Why did the author do it? Cool. Are you getting this? Awesome. Let me put you into groups and have you push all the way through, the next couple pages, taking notes about these author choices. And again, what did the author do? Why did the author do it? We're meeting these characters. And it's this beautiful thing where they have this purposeful reading task. They've got each other to bounce ideas off of. It allows you to move around the room, differentiating, checking on your struggling readers, things like that. Tana, this is so fantastic, so fantastic. I'm going to quit babbling to you right now because I love this. This is super great. Okay, awesome. I hope this feedback is helpful for you. All right.